just the first book, just Edward's point of view, and it's about 670 pages long. But I wanted to do a little reading you to sleep, to sleep, to sleep, to sleep, to sleep, to sleep, to sleep. So let's do that. I have started it already. I'm not that far along, but far enough. So let's just get started. Let me find where it was. I really don't. Okay. Let's look. Okay. We'll start right here. And your mother sent you here so that she could travel with him, I said, making assumptions that seemed to get more information out of her than questions did. It worked again. Her chin jutted out and her expression was suddenly stubborn. No, she did not send me here, she said, and her voice had a new, hard edge to it. My assumption had upset her, though I couldn't see how. I sent myself. I did not guess at her meaning, or the source behind her beak. I was entirely lost. There was just no making sense of this girl. She wasn't like other humans. Maybe the silence of her thoughts and the perfume of her scent were not the only unusual things about her. I don't understand. Hating to concede, she sighed and stared into my eyes for longer than most normal humans were able to stand. She stayed with me at first, but she missed him. Bella explained slowly. Her tone growing more forlorn with each word. It made her unhappy, so I decided it was time to spend some quality time with Charlie. The tiny pucker between her eyes deepened. But now you're unhappy, I murmured. I kept speaking my hypothesis aloud, hoping to learn from her refutations. This one, however, did not seem as far off the mark. I feel bad. Oops, I'm reading it and looking at you, but that's gonna be hard to do. I just dropped that. This one, however, did not seem as far off the mark, and, she said, as if this was not even an aspect to be considered. I continued to stare into her eyes, feeling that I'd finally gotten my first real glimpse of her soul. I saw in that one word where she ranked herself among her own priorities. Unlike most humans, her own needs were far down the list. She was selfless. As I saw this, the mystery of the person hiding inside the quiet mind began to clear a little. That doesn't seem fair, I said. I shrugged, seeming to seem casual. She laughed, but there was no amusement in the sound. Hasn't anyone ever told you life isn't fair? I wanted to laugh at her words, though I, too, felt no real amusement. I knew a little something about the unfairness of life. I believe I have heard somewhere before. She stared back at me, seeming confused again. Her eyes flickered away and then came back to mine. So that's all, she told me. I was not ready to let this conversation end. The little V between her eyes, a remnant of her sorrow, bothered me. You put on a good show, I spoke slowly, still considering this next hypothesis. But I'd be willing to bet that you're suffering more than you let anyone see. She made a face, her eyes narrowing, and her mouth twisted into a lopsided frown. And she looked back toward the front of the class. She didn't like it when I guessed right. She wasn't the average martyr. She didn't want an audience for her pain. Am I wrong? She flinched slightly. That's a very good question, I admitted, more to myself than to her. Her disconcernment was better than mine. She saw right to the corner. She saw right to the core of things while I floundered around the edges, sifting blindly through clues. The details of her very human life should not matter to me. It was wrong for me to care what she thought. Don't mind my cat. Beyond protecting my family from suspicion, human thoughts were not significant. I was not used to being the less intuitive of any parent. I relied on my extra hearing too much. I clearly was not as respective as I gave myself credit for. In case you're unaware, Edward is a vampire, and he can read people's minds, but Bella isn't a vampire, and she's just a human, and they're in science class right now, and he's like obsessive over the fact that he can't read her mind or anything like that, so he's kind of freaking out. He's like, oh my god, and this, like he's just trying to ask her a bunch of questions because he can't figure them out for himself already. The girl sighed and glowed toward the front of the classroom. Something about her frustrated expression was humorous. The whole situation, the whole conversation was humorous. No one had ever been in more danger from me than the small human girl. At any moment, I might distracted by my ridiculous absorption in this conversation, inhaled through my nose and attack her before I could stop. And she was irritated because I hadn't answered her question. Am I annoying you? I asked her, smiling at the absurdity of it all. She glanced at me quickly, and then her eyes seemed to get trapped by my gaze. Not exactly, she told me. I'm more annoyed at myself. My face is so easy to read. My mother always calls me her open book. She frowned. I stared at her in amazement. She was upset because she thought I saw through her too easily. How bizarre. I'd never expended so much effort to understand someone in all my life, or rather existence, as life was hardly the right word. I did not truly have a life. On the contrary, I disagreed, feeling strangely wary as if there was some hidden danger here that I was failing to see. Beyond the very obvious danger, something more. I was suddenly on edge. I find you very difficult to read. You must be a good reader then, she guessed, making her own assumption, which was again right on target. Usually, I agreed. I smiled at her widely then, letting my lips pull back to expose the rows of gleaming steel strong teeth behind them. It was a stupid thing to do, but I was abruptly, unexpectedly desperate to get some kind of warning through to the girl. Her body was closer to me than before, having shifted unconsciously in the course of our conversations. All the little markings and signs that were sufficient to scare off the rest of humanity did not seem to be working on her. Why did she not cringe away from me in terror? Surely she had seen enough of my darker side to realize the danger. Okay, my cat. Just listen to the ambiance of my cat in the back meowing. I didn't get to see if my warning was the... Oh my god, my ears are really annoying. I didn't get to see if my warning had the intended effect. Mr. Banner called for the class's attention just then, and she turned away from me at once. She seemed a little relieved for the interruption, so maybe she understood unconsciously. I hope she did. I recognized the fascination growing inside me, even as I tried to root it out. I could not afford to find Bella Swan interesting. Or rather, she could not afford that. I was anxious for another chance to talk to her. I wanted to know more about her mother, again to keep myself in the seat. This time I had slightly more control. I didn't break anything, at least. The monster growled inside me, but took no pleasure in my pain. He was too tightly bound for the moment. I stopped breathing altogether and leaned as far from the girl as I could. No, I could not afford to find her fascinating. The more interesting I found her, the more likely it was that I would kill her. I'd already made 2 minor slips today. Would I make a third? One that was not minor. As soon as the bell sounded, I fled from the classroom, probably destroying whatever impression of politeness I had halfway constructed in the course of the hour. Again, I gasped at the clean, wet air outside as though it was healing me. I hurried to put as much distance as possible between myself and the girl. Emmett waited for me outside of the door of our Spanish class. He read my wild expression for a moment. How did it go? He wondered. Nobody died, I mumbled. I guess that's something. When I saw Alice ditching there at the end, I thought. As we walked into the classroom, I saw his memory from just a few moments earlier. Seen through the open door of his last class. Alice walking briskly and blank-faced across the grounds for the science building. I felt his remembered urge to get up and join her, and then his decision to say, if Alice needed his help, she would ask. I closed my eyes in horror and disgust as I slumped into my seat. I hadn't realized it was that close. I didn't think I was going to. I didn't see that it was that bad, I whispered. It wasn't, he reassured me. Nobody died, right? Right, I said through my teeth. Not this time. Maybe it will get easier. Sure. Or maybe you kill her, he shrugged. You wouldn't be the first one to mess up. No one would judge you too harshly. Sometimes a person just smells too good. I'm impressed you've lasted this long. Not helping Emmett. I was revolted by his acceptance of the idea that I would kill the girl, that this was somehow inevitable. Was it her fault that she smelled so good? I know when it happened to me, he reminisced, taking me back with him half a century to a country lane at dusk, where a middle-aged woman was pulling her dried sheets down from the line strung between apple trees. I had seen this before, the strongest of his 2 encounters, but the memory seemed particularly vivid now, perhaps because my throat still ached from the last hour's scorching. Emmett remembered the smell the smell of apples hanging heavy in the air. The harvest was over, and the rejected fruits were scattered on the ground, their bruises and their skin leaking their fragrance out in thick clouds. A freshly mowed field of hay was a background to that scent, a harmony. He walked up the lane, all but oblivious to the woman on the in-rain for Rosalie. The sky was purple overhead, orange over the mountains to the west. He would have continued up the followed me to the far side of the building, where he caught up to me and put his hand on my shoulder. I shoved his hand away with unnecessary force. It would have shattered the bones in a human hand, and the bones in the arm attached to it. Sorry, Edward. I know. I drew in a deep gasp of air, trying to clear my head and lungs. Is it as bad as that? He asked, trying not to think of the scent and the flavor of his memory. He asked, and not quite succeeding. Worse, Emmett. Worse. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe. No, it would be better if I got it over with. Go back to class, Emmett. I want to be alone. He turned without another word or thought and walked quietly away. He would tell a Spanish teacher that I was sick or ditching or dangerously out of control vampire. Did his excuse really matter? Maybe I wasn't coming back. Maybe I had to leave. I returned to my car to wait for school to end, to hide again. I should have spent my time making decisions or trying to bolster my resolve, but like an addict, I found myself searching through the babble of thoughts. The familiar voices stood out, but I wasn't interested in listening to Alice's visions or Rosalia's complaints right now. I found Jessica easily, but the girl was not with her, so I continued searching. Mike Newton's thoughts caught my attention, and I located her at last, in gym with him. He was unhappy because I had spoken to her in biology today. He was running over her response when he'd brought the subject up. I had never seen him actually say more than a word further to anyone. Of course, he would decide to talk to Bella. I don't like the way. We're almost done with the chapter. I'll read it quick. I don't like the way he looks at her, but she didn't seem too excited about him. What did she say to me earlier? Wonder what was with him last Monday. Something like that. Didn't sound like she cared. It couldn't have been much of a conversation. He cheered himself with the idea that Bella had not been interested in her exchange with me. This annoyed me quite a bit, so I stopped listening to him. I put in a CD of violent music and then turned it up until it drowned out other voices. I had to concentrate on the music very hard to keep myself from drifting back to my Newton's thoughts, to spy on the unsuspecting girl. I cheated a few times as the hour drew to a close. Not spying, I tried to convince myself I was just preparing. I wanted to know exactly when she would leave the gym, when she would be in the parking lot. I didn't want her to take me by surprise. As the students started to file out the gym doors, I got out of my car. Not sure why I did. The rain was light. I ignored it as it slowly saturated my hair. Did I want her to see me here? Did I hope she would come to speak to me? What was I doing? I didn't move, though I tried to convince myself to get back in the car, knowing my behavior was out of order. I kept my arms folded across my chest and breathed very shallowly as I watched her walk slowly toward me, her mouth turning down at the corners. She didn't look at me. A few times she glanced up at the clouds with a scowl, as if they had offended her. I was disappointed when she reached for her car. Before she had to pass me, she spoke to me what I had spoken to her. She got into a faded red Chevy truck, a rusted behemoth that was older than her father. I watched her start the truck. The old engine roared louder than any other vehicle in the lot, and then hold her hands out toward the heating vent. The cold was uncomfortable to her. She didn't like it. She combed her fingers through her thick hair, pulling the locks. Through the steam of the hot air, as though she was trying to dry them. I imagined what the cab of the truck would smell like, and then quickly drove the thought out. She glanced around as if she prepared to back out, and finally looked in my direction. She stared back at me for only half a second, and all I could read in her eyes was surprise before she drove them away and jerked the truck into reverse, and then squealed to a stop again. The back end of the truck, missing a collision with Nicole Casey's compact by a mere inches. She stared into her rearview mirror, her mouth hanging open, horrified at her near miss. When the other car had pulled past her, she tucked all of her blind spots twice and then inched out of the parking lot so cautiously that it made me grin. It was as though she thought she was dangerous in